One day Sungora the hare, roaming through the forest in search of food, glanced up through the boughs of a very large calabash tree and saw that a great hole in the upper part of the trunk was inhabited by bees. Immediately he returned to town in search of someone to go with him and help to get the honey. As he was passing the house of Buku the big rat, he was invited in by the worthy gentleman. So he went in, sat down and remarked, "My father has died and has left me a hive of honey. I would like you to come and help me to eat it." Of course Buku jumped at the offer, and he and the hare started off immediately. When they arrived at the great calabash tree, Sungora pointed at the bee's nest and said, "Go on, climb up." So taking some straw with them, they climbed up to the nest, lit the straw, smoked out the bees, put out the fire, and set to work eating the honey. In the midst of the feast, who should appear at the foot of the tree but Simba, the lion? Looking up and seeing them eating, he asked, "Who are you?" Then Sungora the hare whispered to Buku the rat, "Hold your tongue, that old fellow is crazy." But in a very little while Simba roared out angrily, "Who are you, I say, speak and tell me." This made Buku so scared that he blurted out, "It's only us." Upon this the hare said to him, "You just wrap me up in this straw, call to the lion to keep out of the way, and then throw me down. Then you'll see what will happen." So Buku wrapped Sungora in the straw, and then called to Simba, the lion, "Stand back, I'm going to throw this straw down, and then I'll come down myself." When Simba stepped back out of the way, Buku threw down the straw, and as it lay on the ground Sungora crept out and ran away while the lion was looking up. After waiting for a while Simba roared out, "Well, come down, I say." And there being no help for it, the big rat came down. As soon as he was within reach, the lion caught hold of him and asked, "Who was up there with you?" "Sungora, the hare." "Didn't you see him when I threw him down?" asked Buku. "Of course I didn't see him," replied the lion, in an incredulous tone, and without wasting further time, he ate the big rat, and then searched around for the hare, but could not find him. 3 days later, Sungora called on his acquaintance, Kobe the tortoise, and said to him, "Let us go and eat some honey." "Whose honey?" inquired Kobe, cautiously. "My father's," Sungora replied. "Oh, all right, I'm with you," said the tortoise eagerly, and away they went. When they arrived at the great calabash tree, they climbed up with their straw, smoked out the bees, sat down and began to eat. Just then Mr. Simba, who owned the honey, came out again, and looking up asked, "Who are you up there?" Sungora whispered to Kobe, "Keep quiet." But when the lion repeated his question angrily, Kobe became suspicious and said, "I will speak. You told me this honey was yours, am I right in suspecting that it belongs to Simba?" So when the lion asked again, "Who are you?" he answered, "It's only us." The lion said, "Come down then," and the tortoise answered, "We're coming." Now Simba had been keeping an eye open for Sungora since the day he caught Buku the big rat, and suspecting that he was up there with Kobe, he said to himself, "I've got him this time, sure." Seeing that they were caught again, Sungora said to the tortoise, "Wrap me up in the straw, tell Simba to stand out of the way, and then throw me down. I'll wait for you below. He can't hurt you, you know." "All right," said Kobe, but while he was wrapping the hare up he said to himself, "This fellow wants to run away and leave me to bear the lion's anger. He shall get caught first." Therefore when he had bundled him up he called out, "Sungora is coming," and threw him down. So Simba caught the hare and holding him with his paw said, "Now what shall I do with you?" The hare replied, "It's of no use for you to try to eat me, I'm awfully tough." "What would be the best thing to do with you, then?" asked the lion. "I think," said Sungora, "you should take me by the tail, whirl me around and knock me against the ground. Then you may be able to eat me." So the lion, being deceived, took him by the tail and whirled him around. But just as he was going to knock him on the ground, he slipped out of his grasp and flee, and Simba had the mortification of losing him again. Angry and disappointed, he turned to the tree and called to Kobe, "You come down too." When the tortoise reached the ground, the lion said, "You're pretty hard, what can I do to make you eatable?" "Oh, that's easy," laughed Kobe, "just put me in the mud and rub my back with your paw until my shell comes off." Immediately on hearing this, Simba carried Kobe to the water, placed him in the mud, and began, as he supposed, to rub his back, but the tortoise had slipped away, and the lion continued rubbing on a piece of rock until his paws were raw. When he glanced down at them he saw they were bleeding, and realizing that he had again been outwitted, he said, "Well, the hare has done me today, but I'll go hunting now until I find him." So Simba set out immediately in search of Sungora, and as he went along he inquired of everyone he met, "Where is the house of Sungora?" But each person he asked answered, "I do not know." For the hare had said to his wife, "Let us move from this house." Therefore the folks in that neighborhood had no knowledge of his whereabouts. Simba, however, went along, continuing his inquiries, until presently one answered, "That is his house on the mountain top." Without loss of time the lion climbed the mountain, and soon arrived at the place indicated, only to find that there was no one at home. This, however, did not trouble him. On the contrary, saying to himself, "I'll hide myself inside, and when Sungora and his wife come home, I'll eat them both." He entered the house and lay down, awaiting their arrival. Pretty soon along came the hare with his wife, not thinking of any danger, but he very soon discovered the marks of the lion's paws on the steep path. Stopping at once, he said to Mrs. Sungora, "You go back, my dear. Simba, the lion, has passed this way, and I think he must be looking for me." But she replied, "I will not go back, I will follow you, my husband." Although greatly pleased at this proof of his wife's affection, Sungora said firmly, "No, no, you have friends to go to. Go back." So he persuaded her and she went back. But he kept on, following the footmarks, and saw as he had suspected that they went into his house. "Ah," said he to himself, "Mr. Lion is inside, is he?" Then, cautiously going back a little way, he called out, "How do ye do, house? How do ye do?" Waiting a moment, he spoke loudly, "Well, this is very strange. Every day as I pass this place I say, 'How do ye do,' house, and the house always answers, 'How do ye do?' There must be someone inside today." When the lion heard this he called out, "How do ye do?" Then Sungora burst out laughing and shouted, "Oh ho, Mr. Simba, you're inside, and I'll bet you want to eat me, but first tell me where you ever heard of a house talking." Upon this, the lion, seeing how he had been fooled, replied angrily, "You wait until I get hold of you, that's all." "Oh, I think you'll have to do the waiting," cried the hare, and then he ran away, the lion following. But it was of no use. Old Simba soon got tired of chasing the hare and said, "That rascal has beaten me, I don't want to have anything to do with him anymore," after which he returned to his home under the great calabash tree. Long time ago there was a very fine young hen who lived with her parents in the bush. One day a hawk was hovering round, about 11 o'clock in the morning, as was his custom, making large circles in the air and scarcely moving his wings. His keen eyes were wide open, taking in everything, for nothing moving ever escapes the eyes of a hawk, no matter how small it may be or how high up in the air the hawk may be circling. This hawk saw the pretty hen picking up some corn near her father's house. He therefore closed his wings slightly, and in a matter of seconds was close to the ground. Then spreading his wings out to check his flight, he alighted close to the hen and perched himself on the fence, as a hawk does not like to walk on the ground if he can help it. He then greeted the young hen with his most enticing whistle and offered to marry her. She agreed, so the hawk spoke to the hen's parents and paid the agreed amount of dowry, which consisted mostly of corn, and the next day took the young hen off to his home. Shortly after this a young cock who lived near the hen's former home found out where she was living, and having been in love with her for some months, in fact ever since his spurs had grown, determined to try and make her return to her own country. He therefore went at dawn, and having flapped his wings once or twice, crowed in his best voice to the young hen. When she heard the sweet voice of the cock she could not resist his invitation, so she went out to meet him, and they walked off together to her parents' house, the young cock strutting in front crowing at intervals. The hawk, who was hovering high up in the sky, quite out of sight of any ordinary eye, saw what had happened and was very angry. He made up his mind at once that he would obtain justice from the king, and flew off to Calabar, where he told the whole story and asked for immediate redress. So the king sent for the parents of the hen and told them they must repay to the hawk the amount of dowry they had received from him on the marriage of their daughter, according to the native custom, but the hen's parents said that they were so poor that they could not possibly afford to pay. So the king told the hawk that he could kill and eat any of the cock's children whenever and wherever he found them as payment of his dowry, and if the cock made any complaint, the king would not listen to him. From that time until now, whenever a hawk sees a chicken he swoops down and carries it off in part payment of his dowry.